Good evening, everyone. It's good to see you here. My name is Jennifer Spear, and I'm an Associate Dean in the Faculty of Arts and Social Sciences here at Simon Fraser University, as well as a faculty member in the Department of History. And I'm here tonight on behalf of Dean Laurel Weldon, who sends her regrets and wishes that she could have been here as well. I want to start by acknowledging that we are gathered on the unceded territories of the Tsleil-Waututh, Squamish, and Musqueam nations on which the campus of SFU Vancouver is located. As a historian, it's important for me to take this moment to make a territorial acknowledgement as an important moment to recognize not just the historical presence of the Coast Salish peoples in these lands, but their continuing and ongoing presences, their enduring relationship to and stewardship of their ancestral lands, and their struggles to heal the historical traumas of settler colonialism. We're gathered here on the occasion of the 8th Annual Edward and Emily McWhinney Memorial Lecture, in which we will be hearing from Professor Michalis Sotiropoulos, excuse my pronunciation there, the 1821 Fellow in Modern Greek Studies at the British School in Athens. I'm going to tell you just a little bit about the lectureship, and then I'm going to turn it over to James Horncastle, who will introduce the speaker himself. The Edward and Emily McWhinney Memorial Lecture was established in 2017 to honor the memory of two longtime friends and supporters of Hellenic studies at Simon Fraser University. And it is devoted to contemporary issues of global interest. Part of the endowment supports this lecture series with its commitment to a global vision in line with Ted McWhinney's life and career. Ted McWhinney was an expert on the Canadian Constitution, but he really lived in two worlds. On the one hand, he was an ease in academia, having held professorships at Yale, the Sorbonne, Toronto, McGill, as well as at Simon Fraser. He was the author of numerous books, and with his academic expertise, he also occasionally advised international bodies such as the United Nations, but also the Canadian government and other foreign states. But he was also actively engaged in public affairs, and indeed in the 1990s he served 2 terms as a member of Parliament and also as parliamentary secretary. Both Edward and his wife Emily were committed to academic excellence and public service, and tonight's event is now part of a well-established lecture series, along with the McWhinney Professorship housed in the Department of Global Humanities, part of the couple's legacy at SFU. Tonight's lecture is organized by the Stavros Narcos Foundation Center for Hellenic Studies, which supports public discussion of topics that animated the McWhinney's professional and intellectual lives. The SNF Center for Hellenic Studies was founded in 2011 with a generous grant from the Stavros Niarchos Foundation, and it is a research center at SFU committed to supporting research of both faculty and students on issues that are related to the history and culture of Greece and the Greek world broadly defined. The faculty and staff of Hellenic Studies look to Hellenism as a global product and in a way are well situated in a global city like Vancouver in their quest for creative ways to study their subject. The SNF Center for Hellenic Studies and its faculty are housed within the Faculty of Arts and Social Sciences and work closely with the Department of Humanities, where most of its affiliated faculty teach. On behalf of the Faculty of Arts and Social Sciences and on behalf of Dean Weldon, I would like to thank you all for attending today's lecture, and I'm now going to invite Dr. James Horncastle, the holder of the Edward and Emily McWhinney Professorship in International Relations, to the stage to introduce the speaker. Thank you.
Dear friends of Hellenic Studies, friends of Greece, its culture, and history. As the Edward and Emily McWhinney Professor in International Relations, I am thrilled to be greeting you here to contemplate with our speaker the specific and focused topic of Greek politics and liberalism in the 19th century, a topic that has particular significance in today's age of populism. Before we get to our talk, however, a few words on the center, the speaker series, and Professor Sotiropoulos. Now, those of you who have been with us and have followed the activities of the SNF Center for Hellenic Studies for the 13 years of its existence will know that these types of topics are very much of interest to our community of Hellenists and our audiences. We have, over the years, sought to tackle them by way of 2 main avenues. On the one hand, we organize an always fresh academic speaker series at SFU up on Burnaby Mountain. This series is mostly attended by colleagues and students, though I must say they are open to the community and have been more widely followed with the advent of Zoom during the pandemic. Our seminars are buttressed by select wider audience events, such as the one we are all attending today. Over the years, our McWhinney talks have hosted Nikolaos Saripolos from the University of Athens and Eliomet, Dimitris Papadimitriou from the University of Manchester, Aris Mironas from George Washington University's Elliott School of International Affairs, Roman Yerodimos, Professor of Global Current Affairs at Bournemouth University, Pavlos Kalligas, the Gladstone Professor of Government at the Department of Politics and International Relations at the University of Oxford, and Elizabeth Prodromou, a professor in the International Studies program at Boston College. Our previous speakers came to us in the, in many ways, transformative era of the post-2008 financial crisis. On each occasion, they sought to engage with aspects of the Greek experience in European institutional and global contexts, but also with questions of charisma, the practice of politics, and even very current in today's Russia-inflected conflict, the question of relevance of the West in liberalism. The Center has also, however, engaged with politics directly. We do not believe that academia is a space for detachment, isolation from politics. The word is, after all, Greek, and is hardwired on the Greek cultural DNA. Thus, over the years, you have had the opportunity to follow talks by Theodoros Bengalos from the once dominant PASOK party, Kyriakos Mitsotakis, before he became leader of New Democracy, a testament to Andrei Yerodomatos' political acumen, but also Yorios Stathakis and Ioannis Milios from Syriza before they came to power. On each occasion, we sought to expose our Vancouver audience to perspectives from established and emerging politicians who had or would at some point play a role in shaping affairs in Greece. Today, however, we pivot back to academic reflection by way of someone who has carved for himself an important role in examining the history of Greece and showing its linkages to broader intellectual, political, and historical trends, Michalis Sotiropoulos. Michalis Sotiropoulos is currently the 1828 Fellow in Modern Greek Studies at the British School of Athens, where he's leading the research program Unpublished Archives of British Philhellenism during the Greek Revolution, 1821 through 1832, a program that the BSA has co-organized with the National Library of Greece and which is generally supported by the Stavros Niarchos Foundation. Michalis may be a historian, but he did not start as one. He actually studied first political science at the University of Athens before turning to history, initially at the University of York, and then the School of Advanced Studies in Paris and the University of London, where he was awarded his PhD. He has taught or worked as a researcher at the Universities of London, Oxford, Athens, Thrace, and Princeton University. His research focuses on the history of modern Greek world, with a special emphasis on intellectual global history in the age of revolutions, and the history of political practices during the long 19th century more generally. His studies have been published in several fora and in different languages, while his monograph, Liberalism After the Revolution, the Intellectual Foundations of the Greek State, circa 1830 through 1880, was recently published by Cambridge University Press. He is currently editing a volume entitled Philhellenism and the Greek Revolution of 1821, Towards a Global History, which will be published shortly. Last but not least, in October 2024, Michalis will join the University of Edinburgh as a lecturer in modern Greek studies, a new position that was made possible thanks to the generous support of the Aventis Foundation. Please join me in welcoming
my timer, because as someone working in a British institution, time is very important. So thank you, Jamie, very much for this kind introduction. And allow me to start today by saying how honored I feel to have been invited to give the 8th annual Edward and Emily McWhinney Memorial Lecture here at the Stavros Niarchos Foundation Center for Hellenic Studies of the SFU. The honor is still greater knowing the esteemed scholars, some of whom Jamie mentioned before in his opening remarks, who gave this prestigious lecture before me. I need to give special thanks also to Ioannis Rallis, both for the invitation, but also for the way he has welcomed me to my first ever visit to Vancouver. Special thanks also should go to the administrative staff here at the SFU and the Center for making the organization of this lecture so smooth. And also, as someone who has been through a number of Hellenic studies programs, and actually will be leading one in Edinburgh, I think it is important to stress the crucial role that institutions such as the one you have here play in the advancement of Hellenic studies and in bringing scholars of the field and from across the world together. Now, when I received the invitation to give this lecture, I went and saw the previous ones. Once a gig, always a gig, I guess. Although this added to my nervousness, as I saw the big shoes I had to fill, it made me also realize that most of these lectures were by and large about contemporary issues, with many of them centering on Greece and the Greek crisis. Compared to these lectures, I will do something different. I will take you backwards in time in the early years of the Greek state, roughly from 1830 to 1880, the period that is when the Greek state was first established and formed. In doing so, I will focus on a theme that some of you may find oxymoron, Greek liberalism. And I say that because usually and unfortunately, many scholars and political commentators take Greek liberalism to be feeble and without roots in Greek society and intellectual life. That was an argument that was repeatedly actually made, especially during the Greek crisis. I'm afraid, however, that this is not what I will be arguing about today. In fact, I will be arguing about the exact opposite. My main assertion will be that Greek liberalism was to a great extent responsible for a historical failure. And by that, I do not mean the failure to modernize or to westernize the state, another conventional argument that I find deeply problematic. By historical failure, I mean the tenure of this gentleman right here. I'm not sure how many of you recognize him, because here he's at a young age, very close to the age he actually moved to Greece. This may be a more familiar picture that depicts the man after he was forced to leave the country that he came to love as a native. Thus, by failure, I mean the failure of the monarchical rule of King Otto, the first king of the Greek state, the king who came in Greece in 1833 and was dethroned in 1862. My aim today is to revisit this period and examine the reasons why King Otto and the Bavarian political agenda failed. I believe that this failure can be better and more effectively explained if we adopt the insights of intellectual history and turn our focus to the liberal discourses that developed from the late 1830s onwards. By telling the history of Greek liberalism, I will also be telling the intellectual history of an institution that was established in 1837 from the Bavarians and the significance of which we tend sometimes to forget. By that, I mean the University of Athens, an institution where the two most modern of freedoms, academic freedom and the freedom to speak truth to power, to recall George Orwell, were first developed in Greece. Freedoms which seem to me to be today under threat across the world. But before I get into the details, a little bit of historical context. The Greek state was officially established by a series of international diplomatic acts which followed and to extent concluded the Greek Revolution of 1821. One of these was a treaty signed in 1832 that recognized the Bavarian's Prince Otto as the first incumbent of the Greek throne and sovereign of the state under the guarantee of the great powers. The Greek monarchical state, initially in effect absolutist, was reshaped by two moments of revolt. That of 1843, what is known as the revolt of the 3rd of September, when the king was forced to convene a